To go to a foreign country and to ask for assistance in breaking up Canada, there's an old-fashioned word for that, and that word is treason.
We are making a very, very strong case that building a new pipeline to Asian markets is in the national interest.
Despite EB's dismissal, Smith is confident a private sector pipeline operator will come through, and that she's weeks away from finding one.
Canada just made a move that has everyone in Alberta shaking their heads. A major new U.S. pipeline deal was effectively killed, and Alberta didn't just sit there. They dropped what many are calling a bombshell response. Why? Because at some point, a province that bankrolls so much of the country gets tired of being told to sit down, wait your turn, and accept less while everyone else reaps the benefits of their labor.
We all know Canada's economy is suffering right now. We've had an inflation crisis, high unemployment, declining GDP, capital investment fleeing Canada for other countries, massive federal debt.
Alberta didn't just complain. They lined up private capital, secured U.S. refinery demand, and mapped out a clear route to market. And Ottawa's response? They treated it like some reckless stunt rather than the economic lifeline it clearly was.
Canada tries to work properly with Alberta. Alberta still is going through this equalization payments, paying more taxes, and basically propping up the rest of Canada.
To go to a foreign country and to ask for assistance in breaking up Canada, there's an old-fashioned word for that, and that word is treason.
Premier David Eby incensed over news that a separatist group called the Alberta Prosperity. David Eby has stressed there is still no private sector proponent for a new pipeline. Danielle Smith says she hopes to have a proposal ready by June.
This wasn't a small project. We're talking about an $8 to $10 billion privately backed pipeline proposal, moving roughly 800,000 barrels per day to Gulf Coast refineries that are specifically built for Alberta crude. Alberta even put $1.2 billion on the table as a loan guarantee, essentially saying to investors, we believe in this. We're committed. We're putting skin in the game. Leadership like that, in today's world, is rare. Yet Ottawa looked at all of this and simply said, no, Alberta has been paying more into the federal system than it gets back. Its oil and gas sector contributes around $55 billion annually to Canada's GDP, with $17 billion directly funding provincial hospitals, schools, infrastructure, and public services. These aren't abstract numbers. They're real paychecks, real communities, and real services. When the federal government blocks new export routes, it isn't just a political decision. It's a block on revenue that keeps entire communities functioning. Meanwhile, Canada's broader economy is suffering. Inflation is high. Unemployment is climbing. GDP is declining. Capital is fleeing, and deficits are ballooning. Every time Premier Danielle Smith mentions expanding pipeline access, David Eby appears like clockwork to pour cold water over the idea. He defends the tanker ban, stresses the absence of private proponents, warns about environmental risks, and throws around words like treason when a separatist group meets U.S. officials to explore economic partnerships. Treason? Since when does discussing trade routes and economic options equate to betrayal? The oil tanker moratorium on British Columbia's northern coast effectively landlocks Alberta's oil, sand from Pacific markets. Meanwhile, oil tankers from Alaska glide along the same coast unimpeded, delivering crude to Washington state. So the question is simple. Is Alberta oil uniquely dangerous, or is this politics masquerading as environmental concern? This is not new. We've seen this pattern before. Northern Gateway was approved, then canceled 2 years later. Energy East progressed only to have regulatory rules shifted mid-review. Keystone XL had years of planning behind it before collapsing. Alberta is consistently told timing is wrong, climate concerns, politics are complicated, but decade after decade, nothing moves forward. People notice patterns and frustration grows. Smith is confident a private sector operator will come forward. She hopes to have a concrete proposal ready by June. Alberta is not seeking a bailout. They're seeking regulatory space to move product. This is not rebellion. It's a survival strategy. It's about ensuring that the province's enormous resource base, which includes more than 1 trillion barrels of oil reserves and vast natural gas deposits, is not left idle while the world continues to consume oil and U.S. refineries continue to refine heavy crude designed for Alberta. Here's what makes Alberta's position so compelling. The province produces roughly $55 billion in annual GDP from energy, contributes billions to federal coffers, and generates real economic impact for millions of Canadians. When export pipelines are blocked, Alberta, and by extension, Canada, loses opportunity. Yet oil continues to move by rail, slower, less safely, and with higher emissions per barrel than pipelines. If emissions are the true driver of federal policy, pipelines are the obvious solution. Instead, Alberta is forced to accept bottlenecks, while foreign oil with weaker environmental standards is imported into eastern provinces. Alberta oil already meets some of the strictest environmental regulations in the world, supports Canadian workers, and strengthens Canadian tax revenue. Why import what could be produced at home? Alberta's frustration is understandable. A province that consistently contributes more than it receives is being lectured about unity, while its projects stall and alternatives are blocked. When polls show 30% of Albertans have lost hope, about 1 million people, these are not fringe opinions. These are citizens watching their province constrained while their contributions flow outward. The answer is not to label them as traitors. It's to ask why they feel boxed in. Alberta has also begun exercising its authority within the Federation. Discussions about a provincial pension plan, a provincial police force, and other initiatives are entirely within constitutional bounds. Quebec has similar systems, yet EI does not label them treasonous. Why does Alberta exploring similar options suddenly become a threat? At the heart of this is a fundamental question about Canada's long-term strategy. If the country wants to be a world-leading energy superpower, ambition cannot exist without pipelines, regulatory certainty, and clarity. Investors have lined up. U.S. demand is ready. Alberta has committed capital. The only thing holding this back is federal hesitation. The logic is simple. Remove the barriers, allow revenue to flow, and use that revenue to invest in emission reduction technologies. That is rational, practical, and in Canada's national interest. Meanwhile, federal policies like the emissions cap threaten to slash Alberta's GDP by up to $1 trillion by 2050 and cost 150,000 jobs. That is generational wealth wiped off the board. Oil and gas remain Canada's largest export, valued around $150 billion annually. If this sector is capped and constrained, what replaces it? Alberta's oil sands production already sits at 5.3 to 5.6 million barrels per day. By the end of 2026, projections show production could reach 6 million barrels per day. This is global scale output. Blocking pipelines doesn't stop the oil. It just diverts it on a less safe, less efficient transport or drives investment out of Canada entirely. Hundreds of billions in resource investment have already shifted to the U.S. over the past decade. If nothing changes, the Federation risks splitting into camps, one that demands expansion and market access, and another that insists on tighter controls and slower approvals. Both sides claim to protect Canada, yet only one side controls the largest export engine in the country. Premier Smith's response is strategic. She is pursuing private capital, building corridors, negotiating with other provinces, and pushing for revisions to federal laws like Bill C-69 and the tanker ban. The goal is clear: remove barriers, unlock revenue, and reinvest in technologies that reduce emissions. This is not rebellion. It is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to unlock resources, secure Canada's position in global energy markets, and ensure Alberta and the country benefits from its natural wealth. The message is simple. Stop blaming Alberta for being frustrated. Ask why they feel boxed in when they contribute so much to the country, face constant regulatory roadblocks, and see their proposals rejected while foreign oil keeps flowing. This is about market logic, economic reality, and national interest, not treason. The world needs energy. Canada can supply it. Alberta has the resources, the capital, and the infrastructure potential. All that is needed is the political will to let that happen. Alberta's push forward is not an act of division. It's an act of strategy, responsibility, and vision. It's a call to the federal government. Do you want to be an energy superpower? Or do you want more climate talking points and political gridlock? The choice is yours.